we're not going to go actually too terribly far today, but we're going to start just over here. We're going to look at some things, some highlights of the fall. Some of them are oldies but goodies, but maybe a little bit twist on some of them, and others not so much. Just ones I really find enjoyable to have. And so we're going to get walking here and just go around the corner. So our first one here, you might see on your list, is Osmanthus fragrans variety forma aurantiacus, and then apricot echo. This is a special cultivar. Typically, Osmanthus fragrans aurantiacus, they're shy bloomers. They flower maybe for like 2 weeks a year and they're done. This apricot echo is a little bit better than that, and also you have to wait for a long time to get good flowering on your aurantiacus, the orange flowered tea olives or fragrant tea olives, Osmanthus fragrans. They are notoriously slower to flower. This one, on the other hand, if I could root it, supposedly they flower from just rooted cuttings very quickly. I can't root Osmanthus fragrans worth a hoot, but they do it commercially. But apricot echo will repeat flower. It flowers at a young age. So two things that are so much better than the traditional Osmanthus fragrans aurantiaca. There's some other bonuses about this one. And I looked up online a little bit, and I don't remember if we originally got this from Nurseries Caroliniana or not, but we may have. I didn't remember to put down who we got it from, but anyways, he says, Ted Stevens, he says he had it about the repeat flowering, but he says the Chinese name, which I'm going to murder for this cultivar, is like Yui Hong, maybe. I think that's how it's Y-U-E space Y-U-E Hong. I can do the Hong part. And supposedly that translates to meaning monthly red. So they consider the orange flowered ones red, even though it's peach to orange on most of those. And its Chinese name, again, it says that it flowers much more frequently if it's monthly red. So, and apparently it'll flower throughout the winter further south, like in zone 8B, 9A. But for here, we get fall flowering, a little bit of scattered flowering through the summer, much more like you do with the white flowered fragrans, which tend to have a bit more of an expanded period of flowering, but are not as noticeable when they are in flower, other than the fact that they're fragrant. And that's, of course, one of the reasons to grow Osmanthus fragrans. I love them. I do not like Fortunii or hederifolium. I don't like their fragrances, but I love Osmanthus fragrans itself. And the other benefit on this cultivar, apricot echo, is the new growth on it when it flushes in the spring and summer is a burgundy color. So you have this nice color added to the landscape as well, not just the plain green whenever it's an active growth. Right now it's doing its flowering, it's not growing out so much, so the flush is not showing right now, but that's another of its characters. And this has grown very well. And when did I get it? I can't remember. We got this originally in 2013, but I don't remember when we planted it out actually. Probably not until 14 or 15. So it's actually been a really good grower here for us. It's getting a little wider. I might need to pull it in a little bit, but Osmanthus fragrans are actually a wonderful hedge plant, and you don't have to have them right out in the open. You just have to have them where the air flows through them so that you can smell it. That's one of the other benefits. So it'll work perfectly fine as a hedge. So and then get that fragrance when it comes out. Any questions?
When would you prune?
Probably for Marilyn's asking, when would I do a pruning if I was pulling it in? Probably to do more of a, like this branch here is getting a little bit out here. I might do any major pruning in the late winter, early spring, just before things start to grow. I like to do that with my broadleaf evergreens if I'm gonna do anything major to them. But if it's just a branch that just needs trimmed back, you can just take off small parts just to shape it a little bit any time of the year pretty much. It looks like it's flowering on both old or the current season's growth. So right here, and Maryland asked if it flowers on old or new wood. So this is last year's stem here. This is a current New Year's growth here. So, and it's flowering on those mostly. So if you're cutting it back and in the spring, you might induce some flowering too on that new growth. So, but you're not gonna hinder your branches later on too much. They'll have time to grow out of it too, and you'll have good flowering later in the season. Any other questions?
How much sun does it need to flower this well?
Okay, Marilyn was asking the lighting. I read actually specifically for this culture, they said actually a little bit more sun is not bad. It'll take sun to shade, but you'll get better flowering the more sun it gets. Okay? So any other questions before we just go back? We're going to backtrack just a little bit and go up the pathway a little bit. Yeah, make sure you get a sniff in here. So the trouble is you stick your nose in it, you might not notice it, but when it wafts through and blows towards you, you notice it. So it looks like we've got most everybody here. So the next plant, if you're looking at your list, is the Cyclamen hederifolium, which is one of the best cyclamens for us here, hardy cyclamens. There's a bunch that we can actually grow here. These aren't the big gaudy ones that you see in the grocery store, even in nurseries during the winter. The Cyclamen persicums, but these are a little bit more diminutive, but they have a great presence. Excuse me. These actually, this has been flowering a little bit in this patch probably since late May, early June. We get some sporadic flowering, but you get in the cool late September, October, November is when these really come into their own and really start to flower. There's some more patches we're going to pass in various spots this afternoon, and you'll see, but this is a good spot to come to. But you can see the flowers. There's soft pink most of the time, though there's pure white forms as well. I have a nice little white one, I think, right here poking up. But again, the main flowering is right now, September, October, November. And like I said, they can start as early as, they basically drop their leaves and start flowering a little bit in the summer for us the last few years. And they'll go off and on sometimes into the middle of January. So how many months? Let's see, let's say June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. That's like 8 months of possibility of flowering. Crazy for that. And then they're also just starting to push up their new leaves. This selection in this area is mostly an Ashwood silver leaf strain that we have. And for years, it's just starting to poke up the new foliage, but that will cover the ground here. And even after these are done flowering in January, the foliage will be there again until the 1st of May when they go dormant. So add, let's see, February, March, April, and May to that. So you have 12 months of interest with this plant, possibly. So it's just become one of my favorites, and just a really good plant. They take our summers really well. They don't mind it when it gets hot and dry. They're from the Mediterranean. Hederifolium ranges more or less all along the Mediterranean and into Asia Minor. And there's, and I think a little bit of North Africa. So, but it's also naturalized throughout other parts of Europe, as well as the Pacific Northwest of the United States. For here, though, they do very well. They don't become weedy. And if you consider them a weed, I don't know, I don't consider them a weed. So anyways, just a favorite plant that has so long of a season for us here, and especially at this time of the year. Any questions? I mean, this is a clay loam in here. They're not terribly picky as long as it's probably not real wet. We've gotten them established. Once they get established, you get a population established, they'll self-sow too. And I get seedlings throughout here as well. So but I don't know if everybody has looked at the flower. I'll just pass that around so you can see it a little bit more closely if you want. So our next plant, as you look at your number 3 on your list, is Rhodophyalla bifida. Oxblood lily, I think is what we commonly call it. So this is a native to Uruguay, I believe. Yes, Uruguay and Argentina. There's a bunch of different species of Rhodophyalla down there in southern South America, and they range from Chile, Argentina, Bolivia probably, and Uruguay. Maybe even Paraguay, I don't know. But this is the most commonly grown here and the most well adapted for us. They've been flowering actually probably for almost a month for us this year already. And I've been really surprised at all the new buds that have just flushed up out of here. They just come up out of nowhere in the late season. In September and October is when they do their main thing. They're miniature hippie eastrums or amaryllis, whatever you want to say, more or less. Or they're really closely related to the rain lilies too, like Zephyranthus and Hydranthus, but you get multiple florets to a spike or escape in this case. So right now they're doing their flowering, and they're perfect for this area here because NC State, what color is it? It's red. I used to have white lantana in here too, and they'd poke up through the white lantana. But that's been several years now. So you'd have the red and white at this time of the year. And then this winter, they're winter actively growing for the most part, or cool season active. So they're just starting to push up new foliage, which it'll look so-so through the winter. It'll look green, and it gets a little bit big and bold foliage-wise. I mean, it's not pretty, but it's like daffodils, but a little bit more rangy. But at this time of the year, you don't worry about that. You have the spectacular flowering, and they've really appreciated this rain that we had finally. And like I said, there's a whole new flush coming here right now. Any questions about this one? Oh, and these are great bulbs, easy growing.
Yeah, so sun.
Okay, I was also, again, Marilyn is asking, do they have to have hot baking sun? I was reading, and we have some in part shade, but the more sun, the better, and I'd take it. These actually are flowering better than they have in years, and I think it's because it is so hot and sunny out here. But they don't have to be baking, but the more sun, the better. As long as they get a reasonable amount of light during the winter months, because they're winter active. So you can actually put them in a place that has deciduous shade, and you'll get a decent flowering. So, but in the wild, they're gonna grow in grasslands, so it's much more open and sunny there. So, but here you can get away with it.
What about soil moisture?
I mean, Marilyn's asking about soil moisture. They're not too picky, actually. They don't want to be wet. They're summer dormant due to the fact that it's a hot, dry summer, I'm assuming, where they're from, in Uruguay and Paraguay. And then you get the cool, moist winters. And so it's more the winter moisture that's more important than anything. But they'll take average soil here in the southeast and do quite well. Some other species might be a little bit more sensitive to excess moisture during the summer, I should say. But Bifida has no problem in our climate. So who here is growing Brugmansias in their garden? See a handful. Do you know, are you growing Charles Grimaldi or bigger cultivars? You're growing this one? Okay. Anybody growing Charles Grimaldi or some of the ones that get way bigger? Anyways, that's more typical of what's been grown in the area for so long, are these larger growing Brugmansias. This is Brugmansia Inca Sun. It is a compact one. It starts flowering when it's only 2.5, 3 feet tall here in the garden, and it'll flower and then off and on until frost. So many times we grow like Charles Grimaldi, which gets 8, 10 feet tall in the season and only flowers for about a month or so in the late summer and fall, just before frost. And it does it in just a couple flushes. Well, this one keeps on making buds and all the axils. It's in full bud right now. It's flowered 3 or 4 times at least, if not more already this season in a major flush, and it will go on for another month or so until we have a hard freeze. That is the great thing about Inca Sun here, is it's a little bit easier to fit into your landscape because it's a little smaller. Look, it's not as tall as me. I'm just about 5'8.5", 5'9", so it's shorter than me. It's not that 8.5, 9, 10 foot that Charles Grimaldi is, so it doesn't take up as much space, flowers a whole lot sooner. So you get to see this one during the summer as well as the late fall and as well. And in the evening when the flowers actually open, it's nicely, pleasantly fragrant, which is a great benefit with the Brugmansias. Another, aspect of all the plants is a good fragrance. So this is one I highly recommend. It's, what did I write down here? Yeah, 5/6 scale earlier, yeah, repeats. I forget, I did look up the guy who bred it. It's actually, he was from Iowa, which I found quite ironic. They can't grow them outside there year round anyways. So anyways, a really good Brugmansia. It's a much more compact, fit into your landscape choice than the other ones you're gonna find for around here. So Any questions about this plant? Okay. Oh, and of course, don't eat it, since its one common name is angel trumpets, and you might go visit the angels a little sooner if you eat them. Either that or you're going to have a really trippy, it can cause hallucinations. The next plant, as you'll see on your list, I think for number 5, is Raustenicula dependens. If you can spit that one out. This one, it goes by various common names, and one of them is, I don't know, what do we have on it? We have nodding mint shrub. I also saw weeping butterfly bush, or budlia, whatever you want to call it, though. That goes back to the fact that for a while people confused it with a butterfly bush or budlia, though it's not. But I find this plant really interesting. Even long before it flowers, it will have these the inflorescence hang in there for a good 2 months. So you have this hanging as an anticipation of what's to come. And right now it's in full flower for the most part. And the bees, there's some that are holding on here for dear life in the breeze on these pendulous inflorescence. And it's in the mint family, as its name says, so the mint shrub. It's from China, I believe. Let's see, I need to look up my notes on this. Yeah, China, and it's a late season flower. But like I said, you have a couple months of these forming inflorescence to look at, add some interest to it throughout the season until it comes into flower in September, late September, October, and into early November. Yeah, that's the main season. Another aspect to it, and actually you can see it here, is the bark on this kind of gets a nice tan or cinnamon color to it very quickly. Even if you would cut this to the ground, it'll do this in a season. It can be grown as a cutback, or if we have a mild winter, you can leave the shrub up as well. So it's pretty versatile in that sense. And it's really clean. As you can see, there's no bug damage or anything on here. I don't know if rabbits and deer will eat it or not, but it is in the mint family, so maybe not, or maybe will. Who knows? But just an interesting shrub for the late season. Yep.
Is it deciduous?
It's deciduous, yes. Is one of our questions was whether it was deciduous or not.
So any fall color?
Probably not. No fall color of any significance. I think they just drop off green, if I remember right. It's never caught my eye. Let's just put it that way. So, yeah. Any other questions while we're here?
I have a question about that.
This one right here? Yeah. What do you want to know about that?
What is it?
Okay, so we have someone asking about, the tree that I think we're getting the camera pointing towards now. So it's a citrus. So this is Citrus Dunstan, which is a hybrid between Citrus paradisi and Citrus trifoliata, which you might know as Poncirus trifoliata. So this is a hardy orange crossed with a grapefruit. And I believe it was a hybrid that occurred at, I think, the Dunstan Research Station, wherever that's at. I don't remember exactly. Probably in a Gulf Coast state. They are edible. It is a grapefruit, like it's edible, yeah. So someone's saying, yeah, it's grapefruit-like. I don't like grapefruit, so it's not edible to me. Very thick rinds. I mean, the rind is like that, almost a quarter to a half an inch thick, and then you have the pulp in the inside. It can be used for cooking and eat it like a grapefruit with a lot of sugar.
Thorns?
Pardon?
Thorns?
Yes, they do have thorns. And I had to think, are they thorns or are they prickles or spines? And yes, they are thorns. So yes, they are armored, especially when they're younger. As a lot of your citrus in its youth tends to have larger thorns on along the stems and at the nodes and stuff. So it is a good one to keep your neighbors out if you don't like them, especially when it's younger. And the lower parts of the plant will hold on to their thorns. Higher up, it will grow out of that characteristic as it matures. And I believe it can be, we grew them a whole bunch from seed, and they were actually, in our giveaway last week. And they come remarkably true from seed. So people should be growing this one in the next few years because we gave a whole bunch of them away. But they ripen for us, and in late November, early December, and through the mid-December. And the ground will be covered. If anyone wants to come, you're welcome to. The volunteers in Asian Valley won't be upset if you pick a couple of them up and take them home, because they do litter the ground. But they are quite interesting. We have a bunch of them mashed all together right here. I have 3 plants in one group here, so I won't have to go far at all. So everybody see the next one, Tricyrtis Fluffy Orchid. So this is a really good toad lily for us. I don't know if you can see, but the foliage on it is pretty much clean. Normally by late in the season, toad lilies in our climate, if we have any period of drought, they look a little bit draggled. And then they'll have the nice flowers on top of that. But the foliage is often taken away from that enough that they're okay. Especially the Herta types, the late season flowering types like this one. I believe this is a selection out of Gainesville, Florida. Somewhere in Florida anyways. And again, I don't think they're known for growing too many toad lilies down here, or Tricyrtis. And this is one that has done well down there. And that's, Mark was able to get some, I think, through Atlanta Botanic Garden. So the great fall flowering form of toad lily is just getting going right now. The flowers have those beautiful speckles on the creamy white petals that are irregular and give it its common name, the toad lily. You have to really look at them up close. They are an intricate blossom. And I don't know if you can see, there's buds. I see buds the whole way down to here on this stalk. So theoretically, this can flower for over about 15 inches down its stalk over the next several weeks. So great late season perennial for us to grow. And part shade is probably ideal. It'll take shade, it'll be weaker growing. And if you get it in the sun, it might say, it's just a little too much. I need some sunblock. Give me a shade tree. But evenly moist soil is probably most ideal for it. And organic soil, of course, is ideal. But it has been a great selection for us. And in the lath house, it has gotten probably 3.5 to 4 feet tall. Out here, it's been a little bit shorter, and it could be the fact that it gets a little bit more sun here. Any questions about this one? And yeah, Marilyn's taken note that this has a really large flowered selection too. So, yeah.
And so is that cultivar?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it...
I mean, there's some other cultivars that probably have just as large of flowers, but this is a really good cultivar. So, yeah. The deer probably will enjoy this, is my guess. Yeah. So, yeah. But if you can get them to grow, this is a great cultivar. A little bit better for our southeastern conditions. A little more tolerant. So, any other questions on this one before we go a really long distance to the next one? Okay, we're to the next plant now. It's hiding under Fluffy Orchid, and I will see if I can spit the name out. You have it written there. Hemiboea subicollis variety Jiangxiensis Jiangxi bells. So this is a collection that Mark actually made along with another fellow, I believe, in Georgia on his last trip to China in 2019. So this is a recent introduction for us here, and it's just coming into full flower now. We've only had it in the ground now for about a year or so. And this is a little more sunny than we thought it might take here. We have it in the lath house as well as out here, but it's done very well here. It's gotten about 1 foot tall, and it's just popped into blossoms the last couple weeks, about the last 2 weeks. And the flowers, they have those speckling, and it matches really well with the toad lily that's right next to it. It has a creamy white flower with pink speckles all over it. If you get down here and see the flowers, they are so intricate. It does want to form stolons off to the side, and it's a gesneriad, or an African violet relative. Since I talked about them about a month and a half ago now, I think, in August. Yes, mid-August I talked about gesneriads. So anyways, this is one of them that's been very hardy. This genus in particular, the Hemiboeas, there's several of those that have been proven really good for us, and this is a really spectacular one right now. Fuzzy foliage, the inflorescence forms in these little bracken-closed things here, and they're full of water. In my interns in 2000, let me think, 20 showed me one of them that you could squeeze them and shoot them like a water gun. So almost all the hemiboeas do that. I did not know that until then. I had to be told by one of my interns. So he had worked as an intern the previous year at the Missouri Botanic Garden. I think that's where he learned about that. Because not many places other than us here in the Southeast grow this, or the hemiboeas. So anyways, any questions about that plant?
So what are the ideal conditions?
Okay, partial shade is probably ideal lighting-wise, but it'll take shade. It might not like full blazing sun. And evenly moist would be ideal, of course. Of course, everything evenly moist. And organic soils, of course, would be perfect. I mean, but you can probably get away with a little bit less than that, and you'll have a good plant as well. So, and we had this one actually in our plant pre-order plant sale there a few weeks ago. So I'm hoping some of you guys got this plant.
Dappled sun.
Dappled sun would be perfect.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
dappled sun. It doesn't want direct sun. So this, I mean, it gets a little more light here in the summer. This is actually probably on the edge of the sun here in the summer. But right now we're in half shade, or about half shade here, as the sun doesn't always hit direct here. So we're really, really good. It does spread once it's happy. And I'm seeing down here, we have a new plant, and a new plant here, they forms runners. And if any of you who may have bought this plant, you may have had runners coming out your pots because they do that. So if it's happy, it will spread too. So
Can you get this at a nursery?
Plant Delights.
Oh,
Other than us, probably Plant Delights.
critters?
I don't know. I don't have, the rabbits have not bothered it in here, which we had issue, but yeah, you never know. They may decide to come in tomorrow and shear the whole thing off and spit it all back out. You never know. So, any other questions? Before we go another long distance. Oh, okay.
Yeah, what does it do in the winter?
It dies to the ground.
Okay.
It'll die to the ground.
And does it come up late or anything?
I don't know. Probably in April.
Okay.
Look for new shoots. Yeah. Not terribly late. It's not like some of the gesneriads, which wait until it gets real hot, the South American ones in particular. This is an Asian one from Chinese. So, any others? I'm actually going to move a little bit, but you guys don't need to. Just so that I can better point out the next one, I think, on your list. The Salvia glabrescens, elk yellow and yellow purple. So this is normally a pink flowered species. So this was a really cool selection. Did I write? Oh, I did put the guy's name. Kermit Carter from Flowers in the Sea selected. So I think that's in California, if I remember right. Flowers by the Sea. And it's just this creamy yellow with a little bit of purple on the lower lip here and there, and on the stamens. It's just a soft yellow. And this is a shade or partial shade salvia. This is not a full sun salvia, and it flowers late in the season, like right now. It's been flowering actually probably like 3 weeks or so right now, and it'll probably go until we have a decently hard frost. So I'm hoping into late October into November, if nothing else. But again, it likes a little bit more moisture. I do irrigate this bed. That spot there wasn't getting water apparently, and I think you might be able to see it's not as pretty as this spot right here. That was all dried up last week prior to the hurricane. Well, this I was hitting pretty well with the irrigation. So let's see, what else do I have about this one here?
This also gets more sun here.
This gets a hair more sun, but you would think it would be saying, I can't stand it, it's too hot and dry, or it's too hot, because it is a shade growing species. So I would have thought that one had been faring a little bit better, but this was good. Yeah, September, October, and a little bit more a shade salvia, partial shade to shade. So, any questions about this one? Okay, this we do have to move about another 15 feet, but it's just over in here, and this is just getting going now. So, and this is one, it's a pretty versatile plant. They're just starting here. And you may have gotten this one if you were here and got some plants from the giveaway. This was in our giveaway last week. I love this plant. It's really hard to propagate, so I propagate it very frequently. You get the cuttings near the ground and they'll root. and they'll grow very quickly. This is Isodone, if I remember right. Yes, Isodone longitubus. I learned it as Rhabdosia longituba and Plectranthus longituba, and I have another couple other names here. Plectranthus effusus variety longituba, or tubus, I should say. Various names for this, all the same plant. But currently they're giving it its own genus. It'll take apparently sun to shade. In the sun, I think it's going to need a bit more water. I don't do too much. I mean, I do irrigate through here, but it's not wet by any means. It's just opening. And I love this at this time of the year because the flowers, to me, look like blown glass. They're just that crystalline look to that blue. It's like, blown glass. It has a transparent look once they're open. It's just coming into bud. It'll be flowering for about a month until we have some cold weather. But we have a few stalks that have opened right here. So it's from Japan in the mountains on Shikoku and Kyushu Islands. And it typically blooms in October as this is just getting going. There's a white flowered form of this tube socks. Tony, I think, gave that name to the white flowered form. So longituba, tube socks, he's going off of that. We don't have that one in the garden right now, but it's, like I said, not too picky about exposure. Evenly moist is ideal, but it's pretty forgiving, especially when it's in the shade. It doesn't have to be overly moist. But in the sun, like I said, I'd say it'd be better with a little bit more moisture. Yeah. Any questions about this one? So this is Caryx scaposa. So this is one of the Chinese species of Caryx, and it ranges into Vietnam, I believe, too, if I remember. Yes, China and Vietnam. What does everybody think of for Caryx? Is the flower that spectacular? I mean, they're there in the spring, you'll often see them. They'll often be brown or black even, green. Some of them have really cool seed pods of our native ones, but most of them aren't really known for a spectacular flower. This one is truly noticeable, and I like it for that. This salmony pink flowers of the inflorescence on this Caryx against the broad foliage. It's a broad-leafed Caryx too, but it's not an enormous growing one at that too. So it stays about, what is it, 15 inches maybe there. It flowers now, but it'll also flower in the spring. So you get 2 seasons out of this plant. Great texture in the foliage when it's not in flower. And it stays fairly clean. We have not cut these back, but they're after, I think, probably 4 years or so. We do have a little bit of ratty growth underneath them. But Caryx don't like to be overly cut back, so I avoid doing it. This is actually a selection that was brought back. We got these from Hoffman's nursery, and they got their plants from... their start from our former, let's see, he's now the director of the National Arboretum, Richard Olson, who was a student here when JC was here. He was one of JC's last students, and many of you may actually know Richard or be acquainted with his name. But he brought this back from Kunming Botanic Garden in China several years ago, and they got it into production at Hoffman's, and so they've gotten it out there, and it is really a great Caryx as far as I'm concerned. So, like I said, spring and fall flowers and decent foliage. So, any questions about this one?
I mean, it looks like it would be easy to grow.
Yeah, supposedly they do really well in our climate, or that is here in the garden, and not everybody can grow it real well. We apparently have some of the nice clumps, but I don't think it's hard. I mean, as long as you don't know, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's like, if you don't know, you shouldn't be able to root something and it roots. And then you find out and you try to root it again and you can't grow it. I've had that happen. So.
What about soil
in here? I do irrigate in here. So this says if it gets real dry, I do water in here. So the soil moisture is decent in here, but I don't keep it wet by any means. We did amend the soil when I was building this part of the garden. I brought in permatil and compost and mixed it with the native soil in here. So it's not bad soil, but it's nothing. I mean, it's not extraordinary. We just throw mulch on it occasionally. So we don't fertilize. So they're just growing here in the duff layer now at this point. So, and I think they've probably been here about 4 to 5 years, maybe.
Is it evergreen?
Yes, they're evergreen. They do, like I said, after a few years, this is the old foliage, you know, there's stuff underneath here. It does turn, ultimately they do get dead foliage in them, but for pretty much, that looks good most of the year. And a lot of your carex tend to be more winter, cool season active. So they actually look pretty good through the cooler seasons. So, any other questions? Which tree? The enormous one? That's actually, it's a magnolia. It's just saying it's late in the season. It's like my mom, I'd given her a, actually I got it for my dad in this case, but my mom mentioned it to me a week or so ago. I brought it down here and it was a magnolia Betty. My grandmother's name was Betty. And I took it home in the summer and I planted it when I was home in the end of, or over Memorial Day more or less. And she says, Tim, it's losing its leaves. I said, yes. It's been growing since March, April, May, June. I mean, it's a little bit further ahead than you are up there, but it's had a long season. It's supposed to be losing its leaves, okay. So anyway, that's normal for this time of the year. If you look down the street, all the magnolias look like this right now. And also there was this little thing called Ian, who kind of loosened up a lot of leaves the last couple of days, so yeah. If there's a ruckus going on over here because I saw it fly in here just a moment ago as one of our hawks that's been flying around, and the blue jay and the chickadees are all upset now. So, so any questions before we go to the Begonia henryi? Okay, it looks like we have most people now, I think. So our next plant is right here in front of me, and right here. This is when it hadn't impressed me until this year, to tell you the truth. This is a little hardy begonia. This is Begonia henryi, and it's, I believe, a Chinese species. Let me look. Yeah, southern China is where this one is from. And it's a much more diminutive species, say, than if any of you have grown Begonia grandis, which often gets this anywhere from that big to that big, depending on the selection. But this is another little tuberous one. And I can't see any, but it's really multiplied because last year there was just a couple here and I thought we're going to lose them all. But it has come up all through this area, and we actually propagated from this colony here earlier in the year, and you can't really tell. But it's coming into its own right now. It's in full flower. This nice little pink blossoms here. And right now, the foliage isn't as distinct as it is earlier in the summer. It might be still a little bit visible down in here, but the younger leaves will often have a nice little pattern to it. So you get this throughout the summer months, and then come late September, October, you get the flowers on this little, this small one. So this is when you can just tuck in there fairly easily, and it's not going to take, it might take over your garden as much as I see of this now. I don't think it's going to be like Begonia grandis though. But this is just a cool little one here that has colonized really well for us. And you know, supposedly it likes more sun than it likes sun to light shade, and we're growing it here in the light shade. So I need to try it out somewhere else too. So I don't know a whole lot about this one yet, but it's just one that caught my eye.
If you have deer, you will never see flowers.
No. I think we can eat begonias too if you really want to. I don't think they're toxic.
And I do have a little more sun, and it's about
Do you have henryi?
Yeah, and it's about double the height.
Yeah, so.
How long will it?
For about a month, I'm going to guess, until it gets a little bit colder. You know, September and October is when suggested. So there's a whole bunch of begonias that we're finding that are hardy here, and this is just one of them. This is a species, but there's a bunch of hybrids that we've been trying and finding out do reasonably well here. They're a little late to come up in the spring for most of them, excepting maybe Pedata fita, and there's another one that we have that's just like Pedata fita. Except for the leaf is not as incised as much, but most of them we're finding I mean, as long as you're a little bit patient, they'll come through. So I normally don't care for hydrangea macrophyllas, but this isn't. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not bad looking for this time of the year. Not all of them go. Age gracefully for us in this climate down here. This is one, it's hydrangea REI 05, or trade named as forever and ever together. It's a double flowered selection of Hydrangea macrophylla. And what I like about it is that it recolors up before the flowers get totally ugly in late summer and fall. And most of ours, they just get ugly. They go straight from looking pretty to ugly. This one has held up, and it's done this multiple years. We don't have, it can range from red to blue, depending on the soil chemistry. In here, we don't have aluminum ions in our soil very much, because there is not true soil in here. It's a media. So I don't get blue tones here in the lath house very often. So supposedly this one, like I said, can range from depending on your soil chemistry. And that aluminum ions also, the other caveat is you need acidity in the soil because it's not just the acid soil, it's the availability of the aluminum ions. We probably have nice acid soil in here or media. So anyways, this is just one I thought it was worth highlighting. If you get close, I mean, there are some brown in it, but there's also really nice reds, red tones still. And this flowered in, I think, probably late May or June at the latest probably for us. So, and it doesn't look terribly bad for that, that long ago. And since I was just in Washington in August and they were just all at peak then in there, which is strange seeing that, but, anyways, this is just one I thought might be worth highlighting, a little bit different for me anyways. And this one actually has done flowering consistently for several years. You know, as you know, a lot of our hydrangeas get zapped midwinter here whenever they decide to come out of their slumber a little too early. And so, you know, 3 out of 5 years you get nothing, and there's 2 years that you might have something in that period that looks decent. And this one's been fairly consistent. So I thought, again, one worth noting. Yep. Yes, there's probably, the question was, it's a double flowered selection. Is that bad for the pollinators? Yeah, there's probably very few fertile flowers in here that would have nectar. And being this is truly double, there's no pollen even, because all the floral parts have pretty much been converted to bracts instead of to anything that might have nectar or pollen.
Is this just one plant?
This is one plant, yeah. And I probably put this here in 2012. And without looking is my guess. So I'd have to, actually, here's my label. Let me see. Yes, because I had it in the nursery since 2008, or until then. It was it was in the first planting. So any other questions? So this is 10 years. That's about the only thing. While you're going by, this is one I didn't put on that list, but this is just a really cool plant. There's another gesneriad here. This is the first time we've had it flowering here in the garden. This little Brugmansia right here, longa piece. So that's a little evergreen rosette African violet relative, so from Eastern Asia, Southeastern Asia. There's another one. I don't have any buds on it yet, but there's, I think, let's see, speciosa right there. So. Okay, everybody out here now? So our next plant right here is Chlorophytum balkeri, or Balkeri. It's our best guess as to what these are. This is a spider plant, but it doesn't make spiders. So I find this so cool that it's, aside from the hurricane, it's normally nice and rigidly upright. And it flowers late season every year, and it's been flowering for just maybe 2 or 3 weeks. We've had some flowers on it, and it'll go for another 2 or 3 more weeks at least until it gets a bit more cold and it finishes flowering. And this is a Southern African species. Yeah, that's about what I have. And I just love the wands on it. And being it doesn't make spiders everywhere like regular spider plants. It's just a really convenient plant. It doesn't take up a lot of space when it's in the summer. The foliage is starting to get a little bit ratty this season or time of the year, but you ignore that for the flowers. But through the summer months, the foliage looks great here. This does not get irrigated right here. Despite there's irrigation in here, there's no irrigation right here. So, and I don't water this. So that's been going on even when we had that 90 some degrees there a couple weeks ago and in 2.5, 3 weeks without rain. So I think these look pretty good for this time of the year. But just, I find it a nice plant to grow here. Different, a little bit different. You can put it in the mid to, or actually there, the mid to foreground actually. I mean, you'll have just a whole bunch of wands late in the season. So it doesn't take up a lot of space. Any questions about this spider plant? Okay, so while we're here, you look right behind, over here, more of the Cyclamen hederifolium. I was just going to point that out. I said we'd have some nice patches. There's a bunch of them throughout here underneath the pines. And our last plant is right here. So Caryopteris incana is typically a 3 to 4 foot tall shrub. And that's what this plant is here, but this is a prostrate form. Doug had gotten this one from Camellia Forest, and I like it. I love how the flowers are just held horizontally out here, and it's a wonderful shade of blue, and the insects are liking it. And it's just a pop of late season color. Again, you can use this in the foreground a whole lot easier. Cut it back late winter to get rid of all the older growth, and it'll reflush and flower on the new season's growth. But again, this is just a nice blue for matching the sky today. It's nice to see the blue sky after several days of the cloudiness from the remnants of from Ian in the remnants of Ian. So. That is my final plant. Does anybody have questions about anything?
What is this pink?
That's just one of many salvias we have here in the garden. It's a Greggii hybrid. I don't remember which one it is offhand. Let me jump over here and see. This is flamenco rose, and it's okay. There's better ones as far as I'm concerned. It's probably a Greggii microphylla hybrid because it doesn't have a species on it specifically, and that would be my guess for that. But yeah, I really like that Caryopteris right there. So, okay. Any other questions? Marilyn?
I just have a question about that salvia
Glabrescens, okay.
So you said it's normally pink. I have one that's...
There's also some purple ones too.
It's purple.
There's some purple selections as well, or blue purple ones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Purple, like
Yeah, there's normally they're not yellow. They have more red tone. Or
I have the yellow one, the koyami.
Koyame, yep.
I have that near.
So sometimes they will lump, I think Koyame is probably a Niponica hybrid or something. And sometimes you'll see that as a glabrescens will be Niponica variety glabrescens or something like that. So they sometimes lump them too, so.
Because the leaves look the same.
Yeah. A lot of they're all, I believe, from China, Japan, Korea area. So yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Now I need to get back to work.